We're here to idea everyone, to fire up your curiosity and connect you with the people and ideas that shape our world. Watch, listen, understand, connect, create. Let's move the human story forward together.
Hello and welcome to The Poetry of Science, a podcast which provides insight into new scientific research via the medium of poetry. I'm your host, Dr. Sam Illingworth, and each week I'll be introducing you to some of the latest scientific findings and sharing a selection of science-themed poetry. After all, we could all do with a little bit more poetry in our lives. In this episode, I'll be exploring new research, which has found that heat waves are becoming more frequent and more deadly. The sun, a fiery iron brands the sky as sweat flows like melting wax across the parched and cracking earth. A blanket of fumes, trapping the heat, shimmers on the horizon, summer's wrath. Peaks of simmering swelter with nowhere to run, bodies stressed and stranded, casualties of exhausting, manic lives. This poem is inspired by recent research published in the journal Nature Communications, which has found that extreme heat waves caused by climate change are becoming more frequent and severe, necessitating urgent action to mitigate emissions and help vulnerable populations adapt. Heat waves are periods of abnormally hot weather that last for days or weeks. They are one of the most direct effects of climate change that people experience. As global temperatures rise due to increased greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, heat waves are becoming more frequent, intense, and longer lasting. The trapped heat energy causes more very hot days and warm nights year round. However, the impacts are most dramatically felt during peak summer months. Extreme heat events put stress on the body and can cause heat-related illnesses and deaths, especially in vulnerable populations. In this new study, researchers wanted to understand how the frequency and severity of extremely hot summers will change in the future. They looked at data on heat deaths across 47 countries, combining this information with climate model data to see how often past very deadly hot seasons might occur in future climates. They found that extreme hot seasons that used to happen every 100 years now happen every 10 to 20 years on average, and that these extreme seasons will happen even more if we do not adapt and mitigate against the climate crisis. This shows we urgently need to reduce climate change and help people adapt to hotter conditions, as acting now will reduce impacts on human lives in the future. Now that you've heard the science, let me read the poem to you again. The sun, a fiery iron brands the sky as sweat flows like melting wax across the parched and cracking earth. A blanket of fumes, trapping the heat, shimmers on the horizon, summer's wrath. Peaks of simmering swelter with nowhere to run, bodies stressed and stranded, casualties of exhausting, manic lives. In this section of the podcast, I'd like to share a poem written by another poet on a topic related to the science that has been discussed so far. In this episode, I'll be reading Heatwave by Ted Hughes. Ted Hughes was an iconic British poet and children's writer. Born in Yorkshire in 1930, he attended Cambridge University where he met poet Sylvia Plath, whom he later married. Hughes's raw elemental poetry drew inspiration from nature and mythology, often exploring the inherent violence and vitality of the animal kingdom. His major works include The Hawk in the Rain, Crow, and Remains of Elmet. Serving as the UK's UK Poet Laureate from 1984 until his death in 1998, Hughes's influence on 20th century poetry is profound, leaving a legacy of powerful, evocative verse. Heatwave by Ted Hughes. Between Westminster and sunstruck St Paul's, the desert has entered the flea's belly. Like shut-eyed, half-submerged Nile bulls, the buildings tremble with breath. The mirage of river is so real, bodies drift in it, and human rubbish. The main thing is the silence. There are no charts for the silence. Men can't penetrate it, till sundown releases its leopard over the roofs, and women are suddenly everywhere, and the walkers' bones melt in the coughing of great cats. Thank you for listening to the Poetry of Science.
Thank you very much for being with us for this episode of the ideaXme show. ideaXme is a global platform. Our mission is to move the human story forward by sharing knowledge of the future. You can find us on all major audio networks at www.radioideaXme.com, on YouTube and Vimeo. Please subscribe.